are filled with a loathsome. For my loins are filled with a loathsome disease, and there is no soundness in my flesh. I am feeble and so broken. I have roared by reason of the disquietness of my heart, Lord. All my desire is before thee, and my groaning is not hid from thee. My heart panteth, my strength faileth me. As for the light of mine eyes, it is also gone from me. My lovers and my friends stand aloof from my sore, and my kinsmen stand afar off. They also that seek after my life lay snares for me, and they that seek my hurt speak. Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. And we're continuing in Psalm 38. Verse 9. Lord, all my desire is before thee, and my groaning is not hid from thee. My heart panteth, my strength faileth me, as for the light of mine eyes, it is also gone from me. My lovers and my friends stand aloof from my sore, and my kinsmen stand afar off. They also that seek after my life lay snares for me, and they that seek my hurt speak mischievous things, and imagine deceits all the day long. But I didn't listen. Okay, yeah, so let's go on. First of all, well, you remember the beginning of this, he talks about he describes his sinful state as being this, loathsome, disease-ridden condition, and applies this sort of spiritual, consequences of his sins to a physical ailment. It's like it's in my bones. There's no rest in my bones because of sin. There's no soundness in my flesh. I've got arrows stuck in me. For a lot of the things I've experienced in my life that I would qualify as chastisement, I can say that, that would be quite an hyperbole, as far as, what are the arrows of God? My feelings of guilt, versus actual opposition. This is one of the things, I was saying the other day about certain people's attitudes towards things. It's like, I've often observed it in life when people, if people don't like me and they want to talk about me behind my back, what people say about me behind my back is kind of not my business. It depends. What they think, obviously, is not my business. What someone thinks of me is not my business. And depending on what they're saying, obviously it can be slander and stuff, and then it becomes my business. But a person's entitled to their thoughts or to their dislike, whatever. It's only when they bring it to your attention you got to think about it, when they start acting on it. Maybe talking to someone else is an action, but their thoughts, their opinions are none of my business. But once they start making them known, and sometimes, it feels like people's words are like arrows shot out. When we look here, well, we go down, let's wait till we get to those verses, but it can get a lot worse. You can suffer real opposition where your enemies are actually opposed to you in reality and trying to seek your hurt in reality. Not just our, because like I said, I feel like we live in such a peaceable, we have such a peaceable existence. We live in a country that's very favorable to having, certainly compared to many others, to our religious expression or our religion, or at least just
quietly following your faith, I mean, there's no opposition, and at least to quietly doing it. It depends on what you want to do. You may get blowback from people, but the kind of opposition, the people seeking his hurt, laying snares for him. They lay, all day imagining deceits against him, laying snares, seeking his hurt. I mean, that's real enemies. People who are trying to hurt you. So, Lord, all my desires before you. All the things, my desires, God, you know what they are. They're all right in front of you. It's nothing hidden from God. It's all plain, and he can read it like he could read a newspaper. Like, as far as, what does Paul want? What is Paul groaning about? Groaning maybe would be better translated yearning, I think. Let's see. That's just a conjecture, because that's what I would characterize this kind of a groan. We're talking about desire. I meant to do this. I'm not doing this right. Sorry, I don't know if there's a better way to set this up. All right. There we go. And am I groaning? Anaka. Sighing, groaning. Again, the outward expression, if I say all my sighing might be a better word. My sighing is not hid for me. Here's the word. It's a sighing, a groaning. But it doesn't appear to have any special hidden meaning behind it. Let's see. Go back. So I would translate this idea of groaning more of like a sigh, yearning is a good translation. There's all kinds of things I desire after, I'm yearning for. What do I, if I only had, what? Well, the Lord knows all our desires. Sorry, I'm bring right window up. Okay. My heart pants. Now, again, that's this is poetic language. Obviously, your heart doesn't pant, literally. It's a metaphor. My heart panteth. Like when dogs get overheat, they pant. It means my heart is overtaxed. My heart is all tired out. It's, my strength fails. The light of mine eyes, gone. So, that when you're in a state of such a, we talked about yesterday, the fact that, in Jesus, we don't have to be, we are contrite before the Lord because of our sin. But we also know with confidence that the grace of God is sufficient to cover our sin. Otherwise, we have no hope. The iniquities that beset us can be overwhelming, but God's grace and mercy extends to it and encompasses it. And so there's no actual, you're not going to, by your incidental sinfulness, going to drive the Lord from your life. What's going to, when I look at the things, the warnings in the New Testament about what causes, or what sort of things one should be careful about as a believer, as far as being overconfident in your salvation to the point where, like, there would be some risk of you deceiving yourself into thinking, you're saved when you're not. And when I look at all the examples of what that looks like, it's not from someone having been repenting one too many times over sins. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they did it again. You know what I mean? Or having something like that. The examples are generally great betrayals. Judas betrayed Christ. I mean, literally a betrayal. And departing from the faith would be, say, or similarly, one could depart from the faith in their heart while still being part of it outwardly, going to church. Maybe they're, some pastors even fall into this category where they've lost their faith years ago. Years ago, they lost their faith. But because, it's funny because people go into education for being pastors and in their early 20s. And, it's funny. It's like, yeah, I was full of zeal in my early 20s too. I didn't have my crisis till my mid-30s where I almost lost my faith. And these people haven't been tested in that regard. I mean, they haven't been tested in life where they've had challenges that could destroy their faith. Seminary itself does a good job of destroying the faith of many because of the way it's presented. Because of the people teaching it have lost faith, and so many people in the religious industry have no faith. It's a really pathetic, when you think about the degree to which Christians are led by faithless and not spirit-filled individuals. It's really quite disturbing on some level because they continue to get away with it. So, I mean, short of abandoning the faith in some way or some grand betrayal of the Lord's trust, and just like with the talents, it's like the talents were given in hope of action, and instead we get inaction and they bury it, and there's no, and I always felt like that was an analogy for the kind of person for whom, as unthinkable as it seems, receives the faith of Christ in vain. Somehow, whereas they receive it only outwardly. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it precisely because I know it must exist. But it seems like if I didn't really believe, I would just get out. I mean, I'd get out of the way too. I mean, you guys have fun with your believing in the Bible. Why should I have anything to do with it? Just because I've been doing it so long? That's not the way I would feel about it. I would want to just completely quit. It must be pretty awful to be stuck in this job or in a vocation, I guess as it's called, that you don't believe in anymore. But when you are all, though Christ in his grace is sufficient, that doesn't mean that as a Christian, if you have a lot of sin problems, it isn't going to weigh you down. It does weigh you down. Christ can take it away. But continuing to do something that's unproductive or destructive to your life, it grinds on you. It wears you down. And that we see is the strength, the failure of the strength. I want to, what I want to do. I want to do things that are right before in the sight of God. And then when I sin, it's devastating. It makes my heart pained. My strength go from me because of the regret, I presume. The light of mine eyes. It's like when you, nothing quite like despising yourself for sin will, nothing quite like that has the effect of making you feel utterly useless. It's not that I can think of. And I guess maybe only for people who have conscience about it. And for some people, I suppose they're saying, but the point is, this is a person whose heart is contrite, who takes the chastisement of the Lord as chastisement. And also remember that the Apostle Paul said, or was it the Apostle Paul or just the book of Hebrews? I forget. We have reason to be joyful because we have chastisement of the Lord. And it means that the Lord deals with us as sons. There's something intimate about the chastisement of God. When God chastises it, whether it be through the mere pricking of our conscience, where we all of a sudden realize we've done wrong, maybe where we weren't conscious of it before. Sometimes you're not conscious of the evil you do. Some people that's probably very difficult because you're very conscientious, you're very aware of what you're doing, and so it's hard for you to do things without being aware that are harmful. But all of us probably have at some point or the other, like, had a realization, at least that though it might be obvious to an outsider that what we were doing wrong, that maybe from our perspective, all we thought about at the time was maybe how we felt or whatever. And so we didn't take stock of right or wrong. We just took stock of, I feel angry, so I'm going to show it, or I feel upset, or I feel sad. I'm going to give that emotion control of my actions. And then in our emotional state, being governed by pain, fear, frustration, whatever the emotional roller coaster you might be on, you do things that you shouldn't do or say things you shouldn't say. And at the time, sometimes, I know that times when I've been angry, I've sinned and felt like at the moment, like entirely justified, entirely justified in my mind in the moment of it. Not till afterwards I feel like I hate myself, what I mean? But we should be, don't be too hard on yourself. You are another man's servant. Especially considering the degree or the severity of whatever sin it is. I mean, it's like a lot of times, the most important thing sometimes about sin is that if we want to take care of it, like I depend on the blood of Jesus for my justification before God. But there's something else I have to do about sin sometimes, which is be reconciled with a brother or the person I've sinned against. And, there's something like wrong about just saying, well, God forgives me, and then not addressing what you've done. And in fact, Jesus himself addressed this. He says, when you come bringing your gift before the altar of God, and your brother has somewhat against you, first go and be reconciled with your brother, then come and offer your gift. There's a point that which God wants us to, there's something that God can forgive us sin and iniquity that no one else can take away. But on the other hand, sometimes we can make our sin, we can lessen the effect of our sin by being reconciled to the people we've sinned against. Meaning, if I sin against my family or a loved one or whatever, like let's say I lose control and I get angry and I just yell at somebody, and it's not justified. Well, I could later on go and say, well, God, I'm sorry I did that, and then just say, well, you forgave me. That's one way to do it. But is that really pleasing to God? I mean, because he's told us, be reconciled. So, we should do what's right concerning our sin and be reconciled with those we've sinned against. That is an important thing to do. It's not just enough to be like, well, I'm forgiven, so who cares? That's not the right attitude. It's like, there's, when it talks about, is let him that steal, let him restore again that which he stole. It's not like you just steal and then you say, oh, well, I stole. I mean, long enough ago, a certain amount of time, it's like, if you shoplifted when you were 5, you don't have to go back to the candy store and that isn't there anymore, and or find the guy in his retirement and give him the nickel or anything like that. This is all depending on, we're talking, the scale is important in all things. Like how great did you sin? Because some sins, you may sin against someone with your words, and it's very minor, and they'll say it's nothing, forget about it. Well, then by all means do. You're going to have more mistakes and worse mistakes to worry about. It's eventually, you're going to have worse mistakes to worry about. And especially mistakes, because we're not talking about intentional sin. We're talking about a mistake. You were, perhaps overwhelmed by emotions. You can't plan for that stuff. It's very difficult to overcome. It's very difficult to learn to get, in the driver's seat with your emotions, because they often, when they come strongly, they just take over. They take the driver's seat. Strong feelings just have a way of barreling into the moment and just taking over your mind. It's a little terrifying when you think about it. When you think about times when you've been swept off your feet by emotions into, like, for me, at times changing my entire personality because of anger. I'm not necessarily this. I mean, I'm the same person, but I don't act the same. And this maybe is making me sound like I'm just angry all the time. It's not like I'm angry all the time. It's just a thing. It's like I said, you stop having problems with certain sins that are, maybe obvious in your life, you will uncover other things hidden beneath them. And in the substructure of your personal being, you're going to have other ways you've been not right that you didn't notice because you were too busy being distracted by the sin that was obvious. There are sometimes in our lives, we know we have a problem. It's the sin I have a problem with. I know all about that. But then it's like, I remember thinking to myself, well, if I get rid of this problem and that problem, I hardly have any sin left. And maybe so, as far as that kind of stuff goes, but there's still plenty of potential for it within me. Surely. All you gotta do is overwhelm me with the right emotions at the right moment, and I will lose my self-control and become possessed of those feelings. And that's something I want to. That's not an easy thing to have yourself have, like, these strong emotions, overwhelming feelings bombarding you, and then you just take all those feelings, instead of channeling them into an outburst, you do what? What do we do with it? Where do we go with it? I mean, it's got to somehow, the pressure has to, you got to let some steam off without scalding your loved ones, metaphorically speaking. Because an explosion of anger is going to potentially be far less controlled. Because you can be angry and sin not. I mean, like, someone does something that makes you angry, you can feel angry without sinning against them with your tongue or otherwise, or worse, because I mean, the worst I've ever done when I've been angry, other than, mostly just rave and rant a bit. You know what I mean? In my day, I confess, I remember as a teenager putting a hole in the wall, and a lot of teenagers do. Drywall is not that tough, and having to fix the wall, too. It's stupid to put holes in the wall. I live in a house with plaster walls. Try to put your fist through that, and you'll be making a trip to the hospital. Or at least to the doctor, man. So, there's quite a bit of work to be done there to be able to manage overwhelming emotional input, because sometimes you just get overwhelmed with emotional input and mistakes are made. It's not the same, but it's still something to work on. It's quite a challenge. And then maybe it's not, it could be a lot of things, but it's like, oftentimes, if there are ways sometimes we sin in seeking our pleasure, Well, and also you could look at all times. A lot of times you're sinning because you're seeking pleasure. Like, if you get angry in a situation, maybe you were at peace before, you were happy, and then something happens, it disturbs you, and you're angry, and in that anger is an expression of sort of looking for peace again, wanting to quickly act to like crush and kill the circumstances. Like to get out of it. Like I was saying before, though, obviously people can get angry and it can be much worse sin. You can become violent against other people. I've always taken out my, anger on inanimate objects if I had to take them out on anything, or I just would make a lot of noise. Depending on how angry I am. And when I'm really angry, it's like, I want to break things. I don't often do it, but oftentimes I know the feeling. I just want to maybe take a chair and just take it outside and slam it against a tree. I can't deny that that I have that urge. You know what I mean? It's like, you get an urge to be to it's like there's all this energy that suddenly gets brought right up to the top, like the angry energy. I'm going on about anger a bit, but I'm just saying, as far as things, when you go beyond the outward sins that are obvious and just transgressions, into things that's like, how do you handle anger? Because anger is going to come one way or the other, and the sin is going to lie in the way you handle it. You know what I mean? I don't know that the feeling, maybe the feeling itself is also uncalled for sometimes. Sometimes anger is a result of a distinct sense of my own self-importance. How dare, or like I'm oftentimes taking myself too seriously, or something I care about. At least to the degree, like I may at times say I have a right to be unhappy or displeased with the situation. But the way I react to it is important, because if I react to it rightly, I continue to be justified. But I react wrongly, and now all my standing to be able to say, to the person who's angered me, to make them see their error. My anger sort of makes it difficult, because now the subject could become my anger. And now that's the problem, and that can take over the whole show. So I get a handle on those emotional sins underneath the surface somehow. And now that is a real challenge. Because making mistakes in the realm of emotions is really easy. Really easy. You have to control yourself in the presence of strong emotions. When you can do that, you have really come a long way in the terms of self-control. My lovers and friends. Lovers means people who love me, not precisely like my sexual lovers, like we may think of a lover as being that sort of thing. But it means those who truly love me. It means like my close friends, my lovers, those who love me. They want to stand back. They see my state. Even my kinsmen, my family. And again, what we look at here is from David's perspective. And it might be hard to see these days, because we don't really think of anything as being punishment from God. We think of, because the people talk, I remember just being around other Christians, and someone would talk about a flat tire, and it was the devil. The devil gave them the flat tire. And you can imagine that when, if you believe that, why you'd have a certain attitude towards negative events. But what about, When someone has a lot of negative things happening to them, what do people look? Sometimes they may say, like, oh, well, God's angry with them. Or maybe he is. Maybe it's destruction, but maybe it's chastisement. But either way, who wants to get close to someone who's being chastised of God? Who wants to get into the midst of that? You know what I mean? I mean, there are people doubtless who want to become intimate with people who are in trouble and help them solve their problems and get out of the situation they find themselves trapped in. You know, someone find themselves trapped in a situation. It's like, you know, obviously the Christian thing to do is to help them. But the instinctive thing to do for human beings may be to back up a bit and see what happens. You know, meaning, you know, something worse is coming, maybe, perhaps, and we don't want to be caught up in it. So we stand back. You know, someone has a sore, it's like, is that contagious? Maybe I better stay back. You know, maybe God's in a punishing mood. I don't want to get too close to you and catch whatever it is you got that God wants to punish you all the time. Because there's almost becomes like a superstitious thing in the nature of some people, like almost like it's catching. If I stand too close to that person whom God is focused on, you know, correcting, that, you know, he may notice me and decide maybe I should correct him too. I mean, so there's as much as human beings oftentimes are instinctively runners to trouble, like, you know, we hear sirens, we're curious about what's going on. Whereas most animals will just run away from things. They don't run towards disturbances. We hear a lot of noise. It's in our nature to run to it. Some other animals are like that too. Ow. Some sort of a pokey thing on my leg. And when it's, you know, when someone seems like they're having a hard time, like Job, you know, his 3 friends came. But in a sense, even though they were there, they were not connecting with him. Because they kept accusing him. You must have done something wrong to warrant this punishment. And they saw it as punishment and nothing else. How could it be anything but punishment? And his unwillingness to admit the sin that he must have done to warrant such punishment, they saw as further confirmation of sort of that there was this unrighteousness in Job, that he is somehow not, you know, living up to his reputation as a righteous, upright man. Something's wrong. You know, you must have done something. There must be something. There's got to be some reason. People see too many bad things happening to one person. They want to stay away, just in case it's catching. It's natural. You have too many misfortunes, you will lose friends. Misery loves company, but company doesn't love the miserable. You know what I mean? The miserable want company, but company don't want miserable people around. And people just don't. That's why, you know, I mean, nobody, you know, what do you think? I mean, a lot of people, when they're complaining all the time about all the trouble they've got and all, you know, they become kind of a boorish person you don't want to be around. Because all they do is talk about the trouble. All they do is complain about their life. People don't like to be around that. But even just the seeing of it, even if someone's not talking about it, watching someone go through something, oftentimes people stand back. They don't help. They just watch. You got a disease. You know, he's comparing sin to a disease, and it's like his disease and the consequences of it. It's like nobody wants to have anything to do with him. And oftentimes, like when you have certain problems, they become very distant from your family. You know, it's like some problems become everyone's problem. You know, but other things, I mean, even I thought of the way, you know, problems, relational problems, sins done against someone you're in a relationship with, whether it be spousal or child and parent, you know, whatever they happen to be in those relationships, there's going to be conflicts that you have to deal with, right? And sometimes you feel like, well, those to be intimate and close, so people are going to be nearby. And perhaps, or you can drive people away from you with your sins. Like me, get angry, and then everyone just doesn't want to come near you anymore because you're a angry person that drives people away. But also, some other sins are things that separate you. People who struggle with masturbation, it's not something you share with your family. Not something your friends and lovers get to join in you on with. And all kinds of things draw wedges. It's like when you have alcohol, it's like you don't get to just drink it with your family necessarily. It's the whole family's got a drinking problem. But oftentimes people suffer alone in their sins because sins tend to separate us if we feel bad about it or somehow that, we might be judged or that other people would be disappointed even in our sinful state. We want to go in private and do it, and it makes us feel isolated. Certainly some kinds of sin, because they're done in private and there's, and we, especially as Christians, we have a desire to do right. If you go into church every week, I don't know, I've never tried, but you go into church every week complaining about the same problem over and over again. A lot of people may not want to hear it. It's like, oh, here he comes, Mr. Problems. You tell people over and over, oh, I've got a drinking problem. Go to AA. Why are you telling me? Sometimes people's attitudes are very callous. Even when they like you, because they could be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for you. I can't do anything for you. And I feel separated from you in this because there's nothing I can do. Sometimes we suffer alone. To some degree, we all suffer alone in our sinfulness because there are some things people, I think, just can't help us with. Because certainly not our friends and lovers. You'd have to have someone hired to help you because they have no investment in you. They have no I'm saying, like, there's no danger, there's no connection, there's no history to in the midst of trying to solve problems where your emotions come and they're directed personally at that person because they're part of your life. You go to a professional, and that's why people use professionals. They dispassionately listen and just give you the best advice they can. So, sometimes friends and lovers are not the best help in certain situations. Because the way they think about you and interact with you is unique and different. They have an intimate relationship with you. The one they don't want to hurt. But you've got this part of your life that's separate. They stand off from that. They don't want to be part of that. But they still want to be part of you. So then you end up with this, you end up with a partial relationship where part of your life is in relationship with people you love and part of it is not. And there's a degree to which that's natural because, sometimes we have jobs and, we're not able to be with our family at all time. I don't know where I'm going with that, really. Well, I kind of know what I was saying, but the main thing is you can be awfully alone in your sin, especially when if bad things are happening to you. A lot of sometimes people that you think love you, your friends, your family, they will forsake you. Like Jesus, when he was getting crucified, all men forsake him. He was getting crucified, not for any sin even, but it's the point. It's that the chastisement, the thing that seems bad, the painful experience you might be going through, people oftentimes don't want to have anything to do with that. And we understand why. One, they don't want to get close to it. It might spill over on them. Two, it's not pleasant to watch someone suffer through things. Unless you're some sort of sadist, which there exists. Some people like to watch people go through pain. I don't get it. They seek after my life and lay snares for me. And you know what? When people are after you to kill you, or or in some lesser way to rule your life, to change your life, to dominate your life. I mean, there's other ways your life people could seek after it, to want it. Like Jesus said to Peter, Satan has desired you and to sift you as wheat. They want to sift you to test. The enemy wants to test you. They want to lay snares for you, little traps to get you to stumble. And they want you to be hurt. They seek your hurt. And they speak mischievous things. Again, mischievous. And it's funny. It's funny because for years I never really understood the word mischief in English. Because we have this, mischief is like a little kid with a wind-up hand buzzer and giving you a handshake and bang. Oh, what a mischievous little boy. Again, it's a different word. It was much more significant in English years ago. It had a much more sinister implication, whereas now it's almost entirely innocent. Like mischief is just harmless mischief. Yeah. But mischievous, I realize that the root of the word, the prefix is mis. Like misanthrope, mistake, misery. I don't know if that's actually, but the prefix mis, we know what it means. Misuse, misremember. I don't know if that's an actual word, but it means to fail, to not do that right? Mischief, the opposite of mischief is to achieve. Mischief. You've accomplished something. You know what I mean? You've achieved. Something has happened. Whatever achieve means. Mischief, achieve, mischief. That's like basically the opposite meaning, right? But in Hebrew, but that's the English. In Hebrew, what does this word mean? It usually means like emptiness, right? Something like that. Like, essentially activity that has no real value. Mischievous things. Hava. The three definitions it gave in the quick definition were these. Listen, it says, and you can't see it, but in Bible Hub, when you hover over a word, it shows a quick definition with the Strong's number, which is 1942 here, it says. Hava. And the definition, desire, chasm, and destruction. So obviously that word has some sort of roundabout derivation that gets you to that. Goes from desire to chasm. But again, it just may be a word doing double duty. Calamity, iniquity, mischief. From hava, in the sense of eagerly coveting and rushing upon. By implication of falling, desire. Like, oh, I desire it. And also ruin. It's kind of like, it makes me think of like the way, what does hava mean? It comes from the word to fall. Fallen. It's interesting, the word means in its root to fall. And in that sense of like falling, desire, meaning I'm falling for something. We use the same idioms today. It means desire, but also ruin, like a fall, right? And honestly, if I was going to translate this into English, like, and be clever about it, I would translate mischievous fell, F-E-L-L, which if you've read like J.R.R. Tolkien and stuff, you understand that like fell beasts and all this. I was just wondering, what about this, fell that? I thought it was interesting that word was used as an adjective like that I think of as a verb. He fell from the sky, a fell beast. A beast that has fallen is a fell beast. But it indicates a fell creature is some sort of creature of evil. A fallen evil creature in English. And I would say they speak fell things. meaning they speak words, because that is like, that if I say someone speaks foul things, it means they're talking about murder and mayhem. As far as in English, that's what that would mean to me: murder, mayhem, destruction, etc. And so mischievous does not really cover it, not in English in this day and age. But fell, they speak fell words. That's I remember that in some book somewhere reading that. And that's more of the spirit in which I see this being written. They're not talking about, ooh, mischief. I got it, we'll get a can of peanut brittle, but instead there'll be a snake inside. It'll be like a big spring, go spring out, and they'll be scared. It'll be such mischief. Or I'll get that bubblegum container with the little snappy thing on, like a little tiny mouse trap. When they pull it out, ow, it hurts. They don't even make those anymore. I think now it's all electronic, a little zap of electricity. Or I'll take the fake vomit and I'll put it in the kitchen on the floor next to the dog dish, so she'll think that the dog just threw up. Ha ha ha! Such mischief. Again. If achieve portrays an ascent, mischief portrays a descent into deeds that are not achievements but mischievements. I mean, a mischievement would be like, I drank a case of beer once. Mischief. That's my mischievement. I don't even remember I actually drank a case of beer once. I'm just saying, like, that's like something someone might brag about. Like, I almost killed myself with drugs one time. That was a mischievement. I just like understanding that word in that term. And I also like the idea of a mischievement, which is not really a word. I've coined it based on the word mischief. But I just look at achieve in its various forms, achievement. And all of a sudden, I think, well, what if I plugged in this word to that? So you have mischievements. People usually don't think in terms of mischievements because it's just like, it's not the kind of thing you catalog. All your follies and foolishness is not a reason to, etch a plaque. But we can learn from everything we go through the Spirit of God, which makes us wise. When they imagine deceits all day long, they're just imagining deceitful things. Because deceit, is one way to take someone is by deceit. Oh, we've got all your things in here. Come on in. And then bam, a kosh to the head. All I'm saying is there are, deceit is the opening act of someone sinning against you. It starts with deceit, getting you to believe something that isn't true, so to get to act in a way that you shouldn't, that is against your interest or against the interest of the people around you. And then you're being used by the enemy. Just like, when I think about people imagining deceits all the day long, I do think in terms of like religious leaders and stuff and the things they're feeding to people and the emptiness thereof and just that's what they do all day long is they prepare those things, they spread them, and they don't help people. Because the main thing is to deceive them, to get them to send the money in. Because religious leaders are very well paid. Many of them. Certainly, even pastors of small churches can pull salaries you would be surprised at. And when you got someone who's got a church of 30 people, maybe making 6 figures, at the bottom end of 6 figures. And that's maybe an exaggeration, but I heard tell of such things. But even so, for the work done by some of them, meaning like some pastors actually are really hardworking. They do during the week, they're counseling, they're doing weekly Bible studies. They are visiting the sick. They do a lot of that stuff. Many of them are very good at it because all they do is serve as they should. As someone who's dedicated their life to service, like, and taken a salary for it, like if I were to take a salary for this, I would have to do it full time in my mind. I'd have to do enough work to justify taking that, like, as a full-time position. You could say, it's like, well, what you do, I'm just, someone might say, they might be the opinion of someone, oh, what you do is worth a salary. It's so valuable, even though it's only an hour a day, that you probably should earn enough money to whatever, maybe it's worth like a minimum wage job. It's like, even if you think that may be so, but, nothing. It's not to be compared with, well, certainly, that's one thing, but then, like, you think about people who once a week, maybe all they do is preach, and the rest of the week they're kind of off. Now, like I said, some pastors really earn their keep. Very hardworking ladies and gentlemen. Because sometimes there's lady pastors, even though I don't approve. But that's, whatever. It doesn't mean they can't do a good job. That one in particular, it's just, I'm always like, you mean you couldn't find a guy to do the job? So you had to turn to a woman. And that may be considered sexist. Perhaps it is. It's only because life is sexist. Only because that's the way, because chances are, what it means is there's a dearth of good men. Dearth of good men. Because they shouldn't be able to, it should be indeed rare for a woman to be able to outcompete a man for that position. It should be rare. If you're attracting the quality of people that you need, it should be difficult because so many good and qualified men are available. So can women be good and qualified too? Yes, but in some way they are. It's just that, like I said, it's like a lot of times you look at like the politics, right? They want to have a woman president. It's not because we got like, oh, we got some great. She is the most amazing person. I mean, it's not like we do this for the guys either, to tell you the truth. Unfortunately, I mean, I wish it was so. Like when we went to elect, we're like, we found this amazing person. They're just an amazing leader, and they need to be president. I mean, that's not what happens. It's not like we go to church and there's like some amazing person who happens to be female who just needs to be a pastor. Oftentimes it's just, hey, they have a shortage of pastors. And so with a shortage of pastors, how can you still say, oh, we can't let women do it? If you need pastors, I guess you got to take whoever you can get. And I don't object to that any more than I object to Deborah leading Israel in the Bible, because, yeah, should a man have been leading them? Sure. But there were no men. And any that were available, she was superior to. So yeah, you choose the woman in that case. Are you kidding me? Of course. But the thing is, in politics, they're not coming up to us like, this is the most wonderful person ever. No, it's just they're doing it to do it. Like to get a woman to be in a position is the worst reason to do it. To just, to like meet some sort of milestone is the worst reason to do anything. Like, we're going to just make a woman or a person of a particular race, we're going to elect them to office like president, simply so we can say we did it with a person of that race or sex identity. Whatever, it's like this is, the leadership of the country is not a game or a prize to be played with like that, to be given just as a like, oh look, now we did it. Someone with female parts is now the president. Like, but what kind of person did you put in? Well, they're horrible. They're horrible. They're thieving, grifting, stealing, corrupt individuals. Oh well, Why we, that's the problem is like the kind of people we're putting into office all over the place are unfortunately the kind of people who seek office. It's like with policemen. I watched a video. I don't remember if I put it in my recommended videos. I don't think so. But it was a good one. It was a guy who'd been a con explaining why some people hate the police. And I totally sympathize with that because my family has not always had I would say I remember growing up, my dad getting arrested once for a suspended license or a revoked license. It wasn't traumatic or anything, right? But I just remember the way my family would talk about the police was not entirely negative, but also wary. Wary. Like I don't want to be involved with the police if I can avoid it. I don't want to, because as I watched in this thing when this guy talked about why some people hate him, because not all police are like other human beings. Some are better than others. And sometimes there's malevolent people. And unfortunately, because of the nature of the work, and I've mentioned this before, because of the nature of policing, because it gives you authority and power, it has the potential to attract people who want to exercise power and authority over other people. And maybe even get a kick out of it. The person who was telling me about how they feel about the police, he was talking about their experience in prison, and prison guards are just like police, that there's basically 5 types, some of them more or less benevolent, but there is a type that is doing it because they love the power and they like to be able to hurt people without consequences. And when you have people like that in the midst of a system, it obviously throws some curveballs in there as far as what can happen and the bad things that can go on. And also in creating resentment against all officers, because you don't have to experience a ton of bad people to start thinking in a certain category that people who are in that category are all bad. Or certainly they might be bad, so we should be very wary of them. I've always been wary of it. I do not want to get on the wrong side of any police officer, considering the fact that they are sworn officers of the law and armed. And especially like if you're in jail or something, they have absolute power over you and can really mess with you and mess up your, cause you to have an even worse experience in prison. And why did I bring that up? Well, some people hate there is that malevolence out there of someone who would do ill to you because they can. And you gotta be careful about that. And why did I bring that up? I don't know. Imagine it was in the midst of these verses, but whatever. I guess I won't get to remember that. We're almost done anyways. But basically, people who are malevolent exist in the world. And we have to always watch out for that. If we encounter it, when you encounter someone who's malevolent, it's not like a normal encounter. They don't go by the same rules. You know what I mean? Like I said, he talked about how he was in an elevator once with a guard whom he had slighted. And the guard stopped the elevator and threatened him and basically told him, you move a muscle, and explained to him exactly what he would do to him. And then he would just tell him, yeah, he kicked me or he did something. You know what I mean? The guard, and then the prisoner can complain all they want, but the prisoner is a convicted criminal. But there are people who will use deceit to hurt you. Don't be deceived about the malevolence in the world. There are some very malevolent people who cannot be trusted. But yeah, you don't want to fall into the hands of authority if you can avoid it. It's like let me sit before God in His mercy, and not before man and his wrath. So they seek my life, they lay snares for me, they seek my hurt. But I as a deaf man heard not, and I was as a dumb man that opens not his mouth. Thus I was as a man that heareth not, in whose mouth are no reproofs. I had nothing to say about it. All these bad things, all these people after me, all these people hating me, wanting to destroy me. But I was like I couldn't hear it. I didn't pay attention. I was dumb. I didn't speak. Man, these people are after me. This is a problem. I'm being all the day long. He's saying in the midst of all this trouble, I didn't say anything about it. It was as if I hadn't heard about it. And in my mouth, there was nothing to say. I had nothing to say. That's what it was like. I was as a man. I could hear, but I was like a man that couldn't hear, because it was like I didn't react. Why didn't I react? For in thee, O Lord, do I hope. Thou wilt hear. O Lord my God, because in the face of such opposition, what else could I do but turn to God? So, we'll start with verse 16 tomorrow. Okay, well, so we finished up 15. Start 16 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me this day. I look forward to being back again tomorrow to continue in the Psalms. Psalm 38. All right.
For my loins are filled with a loathsome disease, and there is no soundness in my flesh. I am feeble and so broken. I have roared by reason of the disquietness of my heart, Lord. All my desire is before thee, and my groaning is not hid from thee. My heart panteth, my strength faileth me. As for the light of mine eyes, it is also gone from me. My lovers and my friends stand aloof from my sore, and my kinsmen stand afar off. They also that seek after my life lay snares for me, and they that seek my hurt